the East Coast to the West Coast and around the world on the Internet. We're coming to you live from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460. This is the Conservative Commandos radio show with your host, Rick Trader. The Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard. You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome, everybody, and welcome, fellow patriots, and welcome once again to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show. I'm Rick Trader, and I'm coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, the way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and, of course, around the world on the Internet with our new Internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And joining me today, as he usually does on Wednesdays, but yes, this is Tuesday, we're still playing this round table of co-hosts here on the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, but joining me today as my co-host is Jonathan Mosley. John, welcome to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show.
Great to be here.
Great to have you with us.
Thanks.
So, John, we lost Robin Williams last night, or Robin Williams lost himself. Unfortunately, he died. He hung himself. He died from asphyxiation. Was listening to the coroner's report on the way to the studio today, and it sounds like he left some kind of a note. They haven't disclosed what may or may not be in this note. He did try to slice his wrists. It's a great loss. I think that Robin Williams was one of the most creative comic geniuses I've ever seen. I can remember a couple of times seeing him on TV doing just impromptu things. I remember one morning he was on one of the morning shows, and he just took over. He just took over the whole program. And he was just hilariously funny. And then Inside the Actors Studio with James Lipton, I remember seeing him on that, and he just took off, and he did just this. The whole show was him just doing ad-lib, and he was just amazingly funny.
Right.
It's such a great loss, John, because in my opinion, tragedies like this all start with just a little bit of pot. And how can a little bit of pot hurt you? But it seems like it can hurt, John. It can hurt a lot of people. And yeah, I know people are going to say, oh yeah, I tried it. Didn't bother me. Look, I'm not committing suicide. But to me, pot is just one of the beginnings with that. Now, tobacco is just the beginning of a lot of people getting into problems with drugs and alcohol. And I know I have a niece who's no longer with us, who died of a drug problem, and that also started with just a little bit of pot. And what harm can a little bit of pot do? But my niece Kathy isn't with us today because of that. So
I'm sorry to hear that.
That's my feelings about Robin Williams. What a loss, what a tragedy.
Yeah, I don't know much about the medicine or things like that, but I know Michael Savage has been going after it a great deal, and he notices how curious it is that it's concentrated, that the encouragement for our use is so concentrated in our universities, where higher dulls the ability for higher thinking, but I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know either. I speculate. I speculate on my observations of life. This is just the way I feel about it. I got into this debate with one of my Facebook friends last night, and oh yeah, people are out there and they're going to defend it. And God bless them. God bless them. And I've seen firsthand the tragedy that comes from drugs and alcohol. It's not pretty. It destroys lives. now you got this great call that states want to legalize the use of pot, like California and Colorado, and probably very soon New Jersey. They make excuses for it. They say, oh, it's medical marijuana. It's just another excuse to try something, to do something that's really people shouldn't do. But it's the way life is. That's the direction this country's going.
Michael Savage's discussion is not so much from a moralistic or puritanical thing or something like that, but and again, he claims from a medical thing that, and maybe a little conspiratorial in the sense that he says it just dumbs down the population, and that could I don't know. I've never looked at the medical science, but his theory is that if the idea is this continuing desire to dumb down the population to make us easy to fool and easy to control, he thinks that's part of it, but I don't know.
John, another thing that I heard just before leaving for the studio today, that all the jobs that we lost in 2008, we have now recaptured all those jobs. There's only one problem, John. The jobs that have replaced those 2008 jobs pay 23% less. 23% less. So Obama can say, well, we got all those jobs back, but those jobs pay about 1/4 less of what jobs used to pay. Jobs we lost. Thank you, Barack Obama. We love this hope of change.
Right. And I may see if we can get into this with one of our guests later when we talk about the effect of amnesty and things like that. But think about the hole in the budget that we're trying to fill. If we're trying to get our debt under control, and the salary base that we're being taxed on drops, at least for a large segment, by 23%. What do you think that does to the federal budget?
Well, they're not bringing the taxes in. That's for sure.
Right.
Could you make no? You can't make the argument that it would reduce the tax income by 23%. But that's a hit. That's a real hit.
Yeah, it's not everybody, but it's happening out there. So it's important all around, and these things are difficult all around.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I want to take a nap, but actually it's because I was up very late.
Well, John, why don't you do what I do and grab a cup of tea? We're coming up on a break in about a minute and a half, and that'll be a great time for you to put a cup of water in the microwave oven for 2 minutes, plop in a tea bag, and maybe on the other side, John, I know we talked about getting into a few other things, but maybe on the other side of that break, you could tell our listeners why you feel like you need a nap and what you were doing last night.
I mean, it occurred to me that I didn't get any sleep. So maybe that has something to do with all this. But let's see, what do we have? 2 minutes.
About a minute now.
Do you think maybe we need to send people from America down to Central America so they'll be safe from all the violence going on in our country? You look, Chicago had 82 people shot over the weekend, as I understand it.
Wow!
Imagine you're Bibi Netanyahu sitting there being lectured to by Obama and John Kerry about violence, and then you pick up your paper or turn on CNN and you see what's going on in Ferguson, Missouri. Is it? And,
Ferguson, Missouri.
And it's fascinating the look on his face. Like, you guys are lecturing us. We got rockets coming in here, and we're being restrained and careful and not trying to do things. You've got people there rioting in the Walmart and everything like that. Some of the news coming out is that the people that are looting are coming from other areas. He says once news spreads, and I heard this, someone was saying this on local radio, happened in other looting experiences. There's like professional looters. They see the news, oh, there's looting go on, come on, hit the car, guys, let's go down and steal what we can steal. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of outsiders that they think they kind of got the first wave under control, and then they started coming in from all over the area.
Wow, I didn't hear that part. Well, John, this whole idea of looting, okay, you know what? We won't get into this now, John, because we're going to go into a break, and you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia. The way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. You can now hear the Conservative Commandos radio show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. Check out our websites, ConservativeCommandersRadioShow.com and CCRShow.com. We'll be right back.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues, take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
What does it take to be the leader in production systems technology? To be the one company that solves production problems at any plant, for any product, and with any technology? It takes a 30-year record of success. It takes total mastery of complex technologies with a history of delivering success every time, without fail. Only one company can claim that high ground in manufacturing line optimization, data automation, and systems integration, and that's Philadelphia Control Systems. In factories worldwide, Philadelphia Control Systems programs, software, and engineering solutions deliver optimal performance and output flow with a record that can't be matched. Any plant, any product, any technology. Philadelphia Control Systems, the leader in production automation since 1982. 800-335-9811. PCS4automation.com. That's PCS, the number 4, automation.com.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today, the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
You can call The Conservative Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And this is the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader. If you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening Eastern Time, please log on to VigilantLibertyRadio.us. And for a repeat broadcast of yesterday's show at 5 p.m. this afternoon when our live broadcast ends, please log on to CPRWorldwideMedia.com. Click on that Listen Live link. Don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. You know, John, I didn't really want to get into this, but you said something that's kind of triggered. I wanted to talk for a minute about, before we go over our guest list today, I wanted to talk about the riots that's going on near St. Louis. Well, apparently there was a shooting. All right, you got two sides. One side says one thing, one side says another. Right. But the people out there are mad at the police right now, and they think there is an injustice. So what they do, they go out and destroy their community. They burn stores, they burn houses, they burn cars, they hurt people. And destroying these businesses, they destroy jobs. And in destroying businesses, destroying jobs, basically what they're doing is they're destroying their own lives. They're making their own lives worse. These businesses aren't there. The jobs aren't there. There are many cities in this country where supermarkets don't want to open up because they're afraid of the crime factor. They're afraid of being robbed. They're afraid of riots. It seems like today, whenever something goes wrong in a community, first thing we do is we go knock off the liquor store. We go rob the grocery store. We go steal tires out of the tire store. Wow, that shows our anger at what the police did. You know, John Mosley, elections have consequences. And if these people are mad at their police department, that police department is run by a chief of police. That chief of police is appointed or hired by a mayor and council. You want to get mad at somebody? Get mad at yourself for electing the people who hired the chief of police. There you go. That's what I want to say about that.
Absolutely. No, it's a good point. Doesn't make sense. And then you're saying, the way you put it made me think that they're protesting the police overreacting, that there probably wasn't a criminal violation. They protest that by committing crimes that sort of endorse the attitude the police had in the first place. Now, I don't believe in allowing police to run amok. I know that it's part. I think it's a very conservative issue to second guess our government and require them to prove themselves. And there are police that go too far, no question about it. But you hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the problem. Is where did this idea come from? I mean,
I don't know. It's to me, it's stupidity to go and destroy your neighborhood. Your life is bad enough. You go and destroy your neighborhood. You go destroy your neighbor's businesses. You go destroy your neighbor's jobs. It just makes no sense, John Mosley. For our listeners to the show, they've probably heard me talk about police before. I believe, there's a big cry, we need more police, we need more police. I don't think we need more police. We need more police doing more police work. We need the police in the community. Find out the people who's buying drugs, selling drugs, robbing homes, hurting people. They don't need to be doing as much traffic patrol as they do, but that's easy. That's easy for them to run out there with their little radar guns and write tickets. That's the easy thing. So I'm not all pro-police. I'm for the police. I think that they should be doing it. I think their mission should be different. So I'm not one that defends the police all the time, okay? But it's just stupidity that when something happens to upset you, what you do is you go destroy your neighborhood. It's like if something happens in your house with your son, your daughter, your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, and you go break up the house. I mean, what good does that do? That's so stupid. Hey, John, we got about 3 minutes before we go to break. Why don't we go over our list of guests real quick?
All right, well, first we're going to have Eric Boehm, who has this great series. I think I want to ask all about the Nanny State of the Week program. That he's got things from all states all over the world. And this week's Nanny State of the Week for Watchdog.org has to do with the DOT banning cell phones again. But I think I want to ask him about his whole list of Nanny State of the Week things. It's a great effort here.
Mm-hmm.
But apparently he's, and I was going to talk about a rant, because we joke that Kevin Way gives a very calm presentation, but to our Indiana co-host, that's a rant because if you're from Indiana. So I think we're going to get a rant about the cell phones on airplanes, and I know people probably have a lot of important or a lot of strong feelings about that as we go along. Is that necessary or not necessary? Everybody, I think, has an opinion about that. Then we're going to have Derek Green on from Project 21, a wonderful effort of African-American conservatives. And he's going to talk about, will amnesty hurt the African-American community more than anybody? And I think maybe people, I think a year ago, no way anybody would even acknowledge this possibility. And I think it's getting out there as an important discussion we're having, that those who are disadvantaged are in the firing line of this job-killing amnesty and the lower wages you were talking about earlier. That'll be really interesting. Then we're going to end up with Michael Rubin, a former Pentagon official, getting kind of deep about whether or not dropping water bombs on Iraq by Obama is going to solve anything with what's happening over there with ISIS. You probably heard that ISIS, the Islamic State, the new caliphate, said they're going to raise the Islamic flag on the White House. And, they're not BSing the way some of our politicians are when they say things like that. He's going to talk about whether Obama has a strategy, whether he's just blowing smoke and dropping a few bombs as gestures, and what we need to do about Iraq, the Islamic situation. And that's going to be a big conversation, I think.
Did you say water bombs, John?
Well, I'm saying that I'm joking because they have those 40,000 people up on the mountain who are holed up and are facing genocide, and so they're dropping water and food.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. Hey, John, we're up against the break. Sounds like we got a great show lined up. And you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader. And we are coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Today's show is brought to you by the First Amendment and is protected by the Second. Don't go away. We'll be right back.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com HelpCCRS.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues. Take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
– 9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Bonnier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening Eastern Time, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us, and at 5 p.m. when our live broadcast ends this afternoon, If you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of yesterday's show, log on to CPRWorldwideMedia.com. And don't forget, you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. So, John Mosley, we do have our first guest of the day with us. Will you please make the introduction?
All right, great. We have Eric Boehm with us, who's a reporter for Watchdog.org, growing an interesting news effort that we're watching. Former bureau chief for Pennsylvania Independent. He lives in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where he enjoys great weather and low taxes while writing about state government, pension, labor issues, and economic civil liberty. A little unfortunate because we're broadcasting near Pennsylvania and you left the area, but we're glad to have you. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show, Eric Boehm.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. And the bit about the great weather and low taxes is a joke.
I see. Well, a little bit of cold, yeah. Anyway, so I'm going to have some fun with this. Partly, I'll warn you, partly because I didn't get much sleep. Here is the buster of nanny statism. I like how you have a program on nanny statism, and your latest issue, I might want to go through some of your other interesting ones, but your latest one is the effort to ban cell phones on airplanes. And, of course, everybody has opinions. A little bit of bureaucratic amusement here of the shuffling chairs and things. But am I going to die if I use my cell phone on next time I fly on an airplane?
Yeah, the bottom line is no. You're probably not going to die if you use a cell phone on an airplane. You may want to kill the person sitting next to you if that person is yakking nonstop on the no cell phone on the plane. Maybe, but very little scientific evidence, despite a lot of concern out there, and of course several decades long ban on the use of phones and portable electronic devices on planes. But there's practically no evidence of it whatsoever. Planes in Europe and in Asia and in most of the rest of the world allow electronic devices and allow cell phone use. So depending on the carrier, they can set their own policy on that, but there's no ban on it. And of course, here in the United States, just last December, the FCC lifted their long-standing ban on portable electronic devices and cell phones during flight. But now it looks like the Department of Transportation may pick it up again and reinstate that ban after the FCC pulled it.
Well, that's where your writing here gave me a bit of a government chuckle here, because so one agency is saying, we're going to drop it, and then the other agency, hey, we'll take that up. Talk about that.
Yeah, essentially for different reasons. The FCC's rules were originally intended as a safety precaution, and after decades worth of after that, ban's been in place for a long time, and there have been decades worth of scientific studies and advances in technology, and they finally came around last year to the conclusion that it wasn't actually dangerous to use portable electronic devices in flight. So the FCC finally lifted that ban, bringing the United States into the same set of rules that most of the rest of the world uses, that you're allowed to use these little devices when you're on a plane. The reason why the Department of Transportation may reinstate the ban is because they've been asking for responses from air carriers, from the different airlines, and they've been given, they say, an indication from the industry that the industry is interested in banning cell phones, not all portable devices, but just cell phones during flight. And so the Department of Transportation may reinstate this ban, as a blanket ban for the entire industry. It really makes me question whether that's necessary, though, because I think this is something that could be sorted out by the individual carriers, something that could be sorted out by consumer choice. Southwest might say our policy is no cell phone use on our planes, and Delta might say you're allowed to use your cell phone on our plane in a certain section of the plane. Maybe if you're in the front of the plane, you get to use your cell phone. If you're in the back, you don't. And some consumers might want to fly without the person next to them talking to them on the phone. Other consumers might want to be able to have a conversation while they're on the plane, might want to conduct business while they're on the plane. And I think that could easily be sorted out without the government imposing some sort of blanket regulation on the entire airline industry.
Well, it's interesting that we are so unfamiliar, I think, with some of these concepts. But there are, and I can't remember to say accurately which was the best example of the airplane I was on recently. And sometimes it, well, it can be done well or not well. But you think that they might be happy. Some airlines like Southwest might be happy to pay. Oh, I know what you pay extra to get a bigger seat. Not just in you might pay extra if you want a cell phone seat. There are ways that we just are not really familiar with as far as that is concerned, I think, right?
Sure. I think anybody who's familiar with the way the free market works, which is to say most people who aren't government bureaucrats, would recognize that there are other solutions to this problem. You can't comparing it to a train doesn't exactly work, because a plane is obviously a little bit different than a train. But if you travel on Amtrak, or if you travel on any number of commuter train lines in the country, they generally have a quiet car or quiet cars where you're not allowed to use your cell phone. You're not allowed to be in there talking on the phone. Now, again, a plane is not divided up into different sections in the same way that a train is. But it certainly wouldn't be that hard for airlines that wanted to cater to people who want to use their cell phones on the plane to put up a curtain dividing off a certain set of rows and to make that the cell phone area. And sure, maybe charge a premium for people that want to sit there. Or maybe do it the other way around and charge a premium for the people who don't want to sit there. You pay a premium so that you don't end up having to sit in the section where the people are talking on their phone. Some carriers could ban it outright. Some carriers could allow it entirely. But it's one of those things that I think would sort itself out in the free market. But it appears that the government isn't going to allow that to happen. To your point about the size of the chairs, I mean, the government doesn't mandate that there must be 12 inches of leg room between airplane seats, right? Airlines can decide that on their own. Some have more leg space, some have less, and you pay more for a seat with more leg space. So why can't this work in the same way with the cell phone?
Yeah, I think a quiet section will work. But people may feel strongly about this because they're using it, but I think it kind of begs the question, why do you want to regulate cell phones and not crying babies? I guess we have a minute left. But if we have to, we should do something about the crying babies. But, how can you say that cell phones are such a compelling problem when we have crying gay babies and kids and everything?
Yeah, not just crying babies, but I mean, the last flight I was on, there was somebody sitting in the row across the aisle from me who was playing a video game on their iPad and had the sound turned on, and was making all sorts of beeps and buzzes and noises. And I think eventually somebody else in the row leaned over to them and asked them to turn it off. But certainly there's distractions. Nobody loves flying. Flying is generally an annoying experience.
Now, gentlemen, I've got to break in here for two reasons. Number one, I love flying. And number two, we're coming up against a break. But I'll tell you, worse than the crying, screaming kid beside you is the crying, screaming kid behind you kicking the seat. Oh, my gosh. Hey, Eric, we got to go to a break. Could you hold on for just 2 minutes, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with... who is it today? It's Jonathan Mosley, and I'm Rick Trader coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360 in Philadelphia, and, of course, around the world on the Internet with our Internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget to check out our websites, ConservativeCommandosRadioshow.com and CCRShow.com. And you can listen to our show anytime, day or night from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. We're speaking with Eric Brom, and he's with watchdog.org about cell phone ban on airplanes.
God has a couple of questions. Is it okay with you that atheists kick Christ out of schools and government? Godstickers.com. Is it okay with you if atheists take over America and mock God? Godstickers.com. Are you ready to fight back and unleash the gospel of Jesus Christ to 30,000 drivers per year on the streets of America? Then get a car magnet from Godstickers.com. Atheists can run from God's word on Sunday, but they still have to read your bumper on Monday. All car magnet sales donated to MissingPets.com. Are you ready to make America do a U-turn? Visit Godstickers.com today and unleash the Word of God on America's highways. Godstickers.com car magnets. God's Word on the street.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And for a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. And at 5 p.m. when our live broadcast ends, if you'd like to hear a rebroadcast of yesterday's show, log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. And don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any phone by calling 832-999-1199, even if you're in Minnesota, like our guest today, Eric Brom. Eric, welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show. Thanks for holding through that break.
No problem. Glad to be here, guys.
Eric, where did this idea come from that you can't make a call from a cell phone on an airplane, or you can't have a computer on, or a video game? Where did all that come from?
Well, it seems like the initial ban, the one that was in place for several decades before it was repealed in December, that's the ban that was imposed by the FCC, came from concerns a long time ago about electrical interference with communication and with radar and other electrical devices on the plane, and that there might be some sort of interference. There's some very limited and mostly hearsay evidence that may have been a concern once upon a time when portable electronic devices, things like Game Boys and things like that, were first being developed. That doesn't any longer obviously pose any serious risk. I mean, planes carry Wi-Fi now. They cater to portable electronic devices, and you can have a Kindle or an iPad or a laptop or whatever open, except during takeoff and landing when they might go flying around the cabin. So it seems like it's mostly, originally it was mostly a safety concern. I think it's important to stress that this new ban being considered by the Department of Transportation is not about safety. It's simply the department attempting to cater to some air carriers' interests and essentially just prevent competition between carriers for customers.
Well, see, Eric, there you go. I don't think the Department of Transportation should have their nose in this. I mean, if United Airlines says, look, we don't want you to have cell phones on the plane. All right, well, that's one thing. Maybe, I remember some airplanes used to have a cell phone right in the seat back in front of you, you know what I mean? And they used to make money on that.
Old plane phones,
yeah. And they got airlines have a right to make money by selling you a pillow or an upgraded seat or whatever. I mean, that's their business. I think that's what free enterprise is and should be all about. But I don't think it should be up to the Department of Transportation to regulate every little facet of our lives. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think this speaks to a broader problem with government regulation, which is that frequently entrenched operators, in this case we talk about air carriers, they have a great deal of influence over the very people who are supposed to be regulating them, and they frequently use that influence. I don't know enough to know if this is the case in this example, but I know this happens in a lot of other areas. That the businesses that are entrenched in a certain industry will use the regulatory bodies that are supposed to be regulating them essentially to uniform the operations of that industry in such a way that limits competition and that limits consumer choice. And they do that for a variety of reasons. They do that to keep prices from being too low. They do that to ensure that new competition doesn't come into the market. They do it largely just to prevent competition between existing companies as well, so that you won't have a situation where U.S. Air says you can use cell phones and Delta says you can't, and then consumers get a choice. The airlines largely don't like competition because competition means that somebody's going to lose.
Jonathan, back to you.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. Like here, that they don't blame us for whatever. I think that's an important topic that maybe we could develop more sometime. Is how people, this idea that regulation is there to rein in those people is perhaps a concept people need to rethink. That the sincerity here. Now, one detail I should point out is you said that they may regulate them, but there's more than just the mere possibility. Why don't you explain this wonderful bureaucratic issue that, just so people notice the proposed rulemaking. So
yeah. I mean, you have to
idle chatter, in other words.
Yeah, you have to love the bureaucratese of all this. I mean, basically what the Department of Transportation has issued, and it was in the last couple of weeks, is a notice for proposed rulemaking, which is essentially their way of saying we're working on this, and we are definitively working on this and not just thinking about it. Back in January, they had put out another statement with another, equally long and confusing name that basically means we're thinking about this. We'd like to hear some feedback from the industry and feedback from consumers and things like that. The problem is consumers don't care enough about stuff. Like, consumers don't pay attention to this kind of thing. The industry pays attention to this kind of thing, so they get to give feedback, and they get the ones who essentially get to determine what the department is going to do. But so now the department has indicated that they are in the process of actually making the rules. That doesn't mean that it's on the books yet. It doesn't mean that it's absolutely happening, but it's it's another step in the winding bureaucrat process of getting anything.
In my observation, including in my 5 lost years in the Department of Education, when the Federal Register has an NPRM, they're going to do it. They might listen. They have to listen as a check mark along the path, but they might make some changes, but they're pretty much not going to put a notice of proposed rulemaking in the Federal Register if they're not going to do it.
Generally, but you would be correct. Yeah.
Because so somebody's made the decision that they're going to do something. They might modify a little bit. So just can't. But it is interesting. You portray, and I guess this is maybe what your nanny state. You said something a moment ago, and I forget the exact wording that to me struck me as the maybe the motto of your nanny state busting program. But this impulse that if there's a problem, it's the government. The government is the solution, and that's really what's taken over our society.
Yeah, I appreciate you pointing out the Nanny State of the Week thing. This is a feature that we do at watchdog.org. Your listeners can check it out there. Every Friday we have a new one of these that highlights, it highlights in some way. It could be the federal government, like the example that we're talking about here today. It could be local governments, could be state governments. Just highlights some somewhat ridiculous or interesting way in which government officials or bureaucrats are attempting to tell you what you can and can't do. Usually what you can't do. They seem to be very interested in preventing people from doing things. But everything from the serious stuff to the somewhat absurd, like a few weeks ago when a local government in New York posted signs telling cats that they were no longer allowed to occupy a certain space of open land, as if the cats could read. And I mean, I don't know about you, but if you know cats, if they could read, they probably wouldn't.
Eric, I'm sorry to interrupt. I've got a cat. He does damn well what he wants to do anytime he damn well pleases to do it.
So we thought, so it's examples like that. I mean,
Eric? Did you ever hear the expression of trying to herd cats?
Yeah, there you go.
There you go.
Literally
sorry to interrupt, but just had to say that.
But it's kind of deep too. Although this is funny and I love it, I do like in this conversation how it brings out how we have just kind of we've totally changed our philosophy of life. I think from our founders to these just assumptions. I I am morbidly fascinated by it because we don't realize they're there. They're like the submerged iceberg. And I say the assumption that you're getting at here, I think, is great. It's deep. That, if there's a problem, government is the only answer.
I think that's exactly the point we're trying to make. And we try to be humorous with it, and we try to be somewhat funny about it. But at the end of the day, I think it's these small, specific examples that really can speak to a larger issue. We talked quite a bit here about regulatory, issues and concerns that are much broader than just the one thing that the Department of Transportation is considering. Last week, we highlighted congressional regulations for sunscreen that haven't been updated in 15 years because so basically Americans can't buy sunscreen that would better protect them from cancer and from UV rays. They simply can't buy it.
Hey, Eric, sorry to interrupt again. Have you ever walked the halls of the congressional office buildings? Have you noticed how white those people are that are in there? I mean, they look like they haven't been out in the sun their entire lives. What would they know about sunscreen?
You make a good point. The issue there was that the FDA hadn't been given the authority to approve these new chemicals that are being used to make better sunscreens. And even though these chemicals are perfectly safe and they've been legalized and they've been proven to be safe by every government in Europe and pretty much around the whole rest of the world, you can get these better sunscreens. Americans are still using sunscreen that essentially is built with technology from the 1990s. So think about how much everything in technology and science and medicine have changed in the last 20 years. But we're still using sunscreen that is essentially the same as it was 20 years ago when there's better options out there. There's better options available to people everywhere else in the world, but the FDA here says you're not allowed to use it. So, and that speaks to a lot of other broader problems as well.
Well, and I'm tempted to, go farther than we have time here, but this goes to people that really believe the government is going to do wonderful things. I heard a similar story about paint used in the military. We have about probably 30 seconds left. That the paint, for a long time, the specs were so old, they had to make specially bad paint and sell it at extra cost because the government was telling them how to make paint, and they know how to make paint better than some Pentagon official.
And this is the government that's telling us what kind of a health care plan that we have to buy now, right? They can't tell us what kind of paint to buy. They can't tell us what kind of sunscreen to buy. Hey, Eric, we're going to have to wrap up real soon. We appreciate you coming on. Please tell our audience where they can go to follow your writings. And, we just found out about your Nanny State of the Week. This is number 15 of 15. I hope it's going to be a series that will be continuing.
Yeah, I hope so. As long as there's nannies out there making rules, and I don't think that's going to stop anytime soon, we'll be covering it. You can check us out. It's at watchdog.org. Every Friday we post one of those. There's lots of other good stuff up on watchdog.org, too. We love to dive into government, things that are well-intentioned, like these examples we've all talked about today. Well-intentioned, but with consequences that
so is that road to hell, paved with good intentions.
Exactly it.
Eric Wimp, thanks so much for joining us here on the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Thanks so much for having me, guys.
Going to take a break. You are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader, and coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360 in Philly, as we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet. Check out our websites. We'll be right back.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros, and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues: take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
– 9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 85251-0096.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be free. Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call The Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, Eastern Time, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. And for a rebroadcast of yesterday's show at 5 p.m. this evening, just as our live broadcast ends, log on to cprworldwidemedia.com. And you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any telephone by calling 832-999-1199. So, Jonathan Mosley, we do have our next guest. Will you please make the introduction?
Please, we have Derek Green, who is representing the Project 21 group, a leading voice of black conservatives, originally organized under the National Center for Public Policy Research, a great organization. And he is a, excuse me, I'm something in my throat. Derek Green has a master's in theological studies from Fuller Theological Seminary, an excellent institution I know of. Is currently pursuing his doctorate in ministry, and he wants to hear about his article, Obama Amnesty Would Hurt Black Americans. Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, Derek Green.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
It's great. Thanks. Now, this is an amazing topic because it seems to me that even a year ago, in our national discussion, this is almost unthinkable for this idea to come across. And now it's starting to, people are starting to think things through, think the consequences of their good intentions or whatever. What are you seeing about the situation in our country, in Black America, and the ideas of amnesty?
Well, I think when we talk about immigration, obviously it's always a good thing to talk about legal immigration and illegal immigration. I think when the discussion started about illegal immigration and the effects of it, I think many people simply said we don't want people coming into the country because it's breaking our laws, and then they had a myriad of reasons that were justifiable for holding those positions. But I think what we're starting to see, particularly in the black community, is that blacks are against this notion of potential amnesty or accepting these illegal immigrants because they are going to be the ones who are going to suffer the consequences of such a decision. Primarily because the majority of the illegal immigrants flooding over the southern border are low-skilled and low-educated. And unfortunately, there are a number of blacks who are disproportionately represented in that category as well, as both being lower-educated and lower-skilled. And so what we have is an increase of a group who are going to be competing for low-skilled jobs that's going to have the negative effect of depressing wages and increasing competition for jobs that aren't there. And so what's going to happen is it's going to increase the unemployment rate, and there's several other factors that are going to negatively affect black Americans as well. And so we're starting to hear some discontent percolating in the black community as it pertains to illegal immigration, and I think rightly so.
Well, yeah, and, on one hand, I might, wonder kind of like what took them so long. On the other hand, there seem to be some supposedly educated economists and officials that are, pontificating on this, insisting that massive amnesty was good for the economy, and there seems to be a lot of different opinions and theories and currents about that. Obviously, I think we should think it through, but do you think, there's a lot of people like the leaders proposing this on both sides of both parties, insisting, this is going to be great for our economy. Do you think the black community is sold, hadn't been thinking about it, just trusting? Where do you think they have been on that, and where they're going?
It's interesting when I hear them say these types of things that it's going to be good for the economy. They never really go into extensive detail articulating why that is. Right. For black Americans, it's not going to be good for the economy for the reasons I already stated. It's going to increase competition for jobs that they can't get, and it will depress the wages of the jobs they do get. So, for example, over the last 5.5 years, black unemployment has been really, really high. It's been at or near double the national rate. It was either at 16% or over 16% 11 times. When you talk about teen unemployment, teen unemployment has been below 35% only 5 times. So you have astronomical rates of high unemployment. Again, if you inject an influx of illegal immigrants into this scenario, this equation, now you're increasing the pool of people who are competing for these jobs. And so I don't think it's going to be good for Black Americans as it relates to the economy, because Blacks have already had a difficult time trying to enter the workforce without the influx of immigration. Now we're going to go and complicate that problem. Now, on the other hand, if people who are arguing for amnesty or open borders are saying that this is going to be good for our economy because it will increase the prices of goods and services that many people consume, then to me, that's a passive argument for why we should be talking about reducing minimum wage, because that's actually what they're talking about. So, but at the same time, these same people who want open borders are cheerleading the administration and everybody who says that we should increase the minimum wage as some sort of effective economic policy. They're coming and going at the same time, and I think that needs to be addressed.
Well, I would imagine that those people aren't even trying to be logical or sincere. They're just pandering. But
I agree 100% with that.
Do you think that the vague, mysterious promises that this is good for our economy versus what may seem like a real concrete thing right in front of people, do you see that as sort of changing minds? That we're getting all these experts saying it's good for our economy, and then people looking right in front and say, well, I don't see that, but I do see how it's going to be bad for me. Do you think that may be hitting home?
I think it is, because again, these are the people who are talking about how beneficial open borders will be for the economy, are people who have the monetary resources and other resources that can actually insulate them from the problem or the logical conclusion of having open borders. People who are sitting down on the ground floor saying, wait a second, this isn't going to be good for us, are more like people such as myself who, because I don't have the economic resources to insulate myself from the conclusions of these policy decisions. And so when people are on the ground floor saying, hey, listen, if you were telling us that this is going to be good for the economy, but I come from a community of high unemployment, it doesn't make sense. If you're telling me this is going to be good for our education system, well, listen, in our district, we've already had schools closed because of the lack of resources. Now we're going to further burden the school system by trying to hire teachers for the influx of illegal immigrants. If you're telling me this is going to be good for the economy, well, wait a second, I already have a difficulty of getting access to medical care. Now we're going to have to strain the resources of the local clinic because of the influx of immigration. And so I think there is a disconnect between those people who are advocating for open borders or advocating for amnesty, not having to deal with the logical consequences of such policies.
Well, I think it's interesting that the adaptation and rearranging that may take place with changes, may require resources to bridge the gap and to make it through those changes that not everybody. I think that's a really interesting point. But I was going to go back to some of your statistics in your article. By the way, did I miss where people could find this article? I apologize for that. You have how? Go ahead.
They can go to nationalcenter.org and they can click the link to Project 21. And on Project 21, there's a bunch of links and resources to not only this PR statement, but a bunch of commentaries that members of Project 21 have written in support of a various number of issues.
Well, we always try to connect people, but sometimes people want to follow along, during as well. So, but the statistics, again, we've heard many of these before, but we're really not. This just hitting me again that this is really horrific. The situation is unsustainable here. What's going on among black unemployment, and I wonder if you want to speak to that anymore. We got about a minute before the break.
Yeah, like I said, it's just when you have a black unemployment that's hit 16% 11 times or more, and you have black teen unemployment that's almost hit 50% 3 times under the first black president. These are statistics that are they're disheartening, but they're astounding in how high, perpetually high that they've been. And so, again, you look at that type of thing and you say we're going to complicate this even more by increasing the number of people who are trying to find jobs. What you're going to find is you're not only going to not have people employed, but you're going to increase the size and scope of the number of people who are going to be dependent upon the government.
Can we pick that up after a 2-minute break?
Okay, we are going to go to break right now. You're listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader, coming to you live from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, and of course around the world on the internet. Hey, please check out our websites, conservativecommandosradioshow.com and ccrshow.com. Our guest this segment is Derek Green. He's with Project 21, and we're discussing Obama's amnesty would hurt black Americans. Please don't go away. We're going to continue our conversation in just a minute.
Yeah, that's my prerogative. They say I'm nasty, but
Listen up, Christians. God has a couple of questions. Is it okay with you that atheists kick Christ out of schools and government? Godstickers.com. Is it okay with you if atheists take over America and mock God? Godstickers.com. Are you ready to fight back and unleash the gospel of Jesus Christ to 30,000 drivers per year on the streets of America? Then get a car magnet from Godstickers.com. Atheists can run from God's Word on Sunday, but they still have to read your bumper on Monday. All car magnet sales donated to MissingPets.com. Are you ready to make America do a U-turn? Visit Godstickers.com today and unleash the Word of God on America's highways. Godstickers.com car magnets. God's Word on the street.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glassboro, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Jonathan and Rick. And for a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. And for a rebroadcast of yesterday's show at 5 p.m. this evening, in about 45 minutes from now, you can hear a rebroadcast of yesterday's show by logging on to CPRWorldwideMedia.com. Our guest this segment is Derek Green. Derek is a member of Project 21, a leading voice of black conservatives. Derek, thanks for holding through that break. We appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
Derek, it seems to me that this is more than a double whammy that is facing the black community. And why I'm saying that is, for one thing, it just came out today that we are now back to the level of jobs that we had in 2008. Okay, except those jobs are paying 23% less today than they did in 2008. And that the report also found that 73% of the metro area households earn salaries of less than $35,000 a year. That compares to average salaries in other communities of $47,000 a year. So Derek, I see this as a double whammy, don't you?
Absolutely. When the recession hit, Black Americans were amongst the most devastated, worse off, and they were hit the worst, I should say. They didn't have a lot of wealth anyway. A lot of their wealth was bound up in their home. And once the market crashed, so did their wealth. And so you have, not only do they not have a lot of wealth, we have depressed wages, just like you mentioned. Overall wages have gone down, but so have Black wages as well. And so it is a double whammy. It's a double whammy, and it's unfortunate that this whammy has been propagated by people who profess to have Black Americans' best interests at heart, primarily those who are self-identified as progressive, maybe Democrats, even the NAACP, the Congressional Black Caucus. These are the type of people who are wanting to have these open borders, but yet not taking into effect how worse off or how bad off Black Americans have been hit since the recession and the so-called recovery. Mm-hmm. It's unfortunate, and that's why I think that the discontent amongst Black Americans is starting to get to a national level, at which point these concerns need to be taken seriously.
Derek, rather than call it a double whammy, I think you could call it a quadruple whammy, because these people that are coming up from Central and South America, they're going to be integrated in our societies, which means that they're going to be going to our schools, they're going to need care at our hospitals, they're going to need resources of the police and fire departments, and we could go on and on and on down the list. But let's just take schools for a minute, okay? In the metro areas, schools, let's just use an example of Philadelphia. Philadelphia, the school system is millions and millions of dollars in debt. They're having a hard time teaching the students there already. If you bring other children in, coming from Central and South America, put them in our schools, the children that are there will be hurt the most, Derek, because where are the teachers going to have to focus their attention? They're going to have to focus their attention on these children that need to be brought up to speed, up to the class level of the other students. So who's going to get the attention, Derek? It's going to be the students of these illegal immigrants. Now let's talk for a minute about health care. A large majority of the people in the inner cities get their health care at hospital emergency rooms. Now, where are these people, these illegal immigrants coming up from Central and South America, where are they going to get their health care? Also from the same emergency rooms. Can you see what I'm getting at, Derek? This is not a very pretty picture.
Absolutely, and that goes directly to my point of the people who actually have to bear the consequences of the practical effects of this policy. These are the people who are complaining, and I think that's why you are seeing, like we saw the film of the lady who was in Houston complaining about what's going to happen with illegal immigration. You have film of people who are complaining in Chicago about what's going to happen with the effects of the black community of illegal immigration. These are the people who are recognizing exactly what you said. It's going to directly affect them. We already know that the school system is a poor delivery of education to poor children, regardless of color, but particularly in the inner city. So now when we give, put more 500 illegal immigrants in that educational system, just like you said, we have to go and hire more teachers who speak Spanish or the Indian dialect of Spanish.
Right, in Philadelphia, they can't hire more teachers. They have to lay teachers off. I'm just using Philadelphia as an example. They have to lay teachers off because they don't have the budget. The city of Philadelphia has chased taxpayers and businesses out of the city. So you have less tax revenue coming in. And here you're going to bring more children in to our schools. And again, I'm just using Philadelphia as an example. But Derek, what kind of frustrates me, and I wanted to get your feeling about this, people in the inner cities, instead of looking at this and looking at the people, the politicians, who they keep reelecting year after year after year because they have a D after their name. That, Derek, when is that going to change? Because it seems like these people who they keep reelecting because they have a D after their name and they think they have their backs, they really don't have their backs. Am I right or wrong, Derek? Correct me if I'm wrong.
You're right, and you hit on an important issue. It's again, when we can talk about these statistics and we can talk about the issues of illegal immigration on the black community, and I think that we should. But I think it has to get to a point where blacks themselves have to start to question their unflinching loyalty to the Democrat Party. For 55 and 60 years, just like you said, they've been voting for anybody with a D behind their name. Well, after 50 and 60 years, I think we have pretty tangible evidence to say that the policies that have been promised or the goods that have been promised haven't really borne themselves out. And so I think, especially when it comes to illegal immigration, and many people talk about the education system as well, these are issues in which black Americans are going to have to start huddling amongst themselves to start to talk and say, is it now time for us to consider other options? Because the options that we continually choose haven't worked out the best for us. And so but at the same time, we have to have courageous politicians, whether they're independent or conservative, to go into these communities with a very detailed message, to talk with these people, to show them the practical effects of the policies that they've supported for the last 50 years. If conservatives, if independents don't want to take that time to do so, then there is no onus, really, for black Americans to consider alternative ways of thinking. Listen, many people go around and question, hasn't 50 years been enough for blacks to say enough is enough? Obviously not. But I think it's a two-part thing. Blacks have to start to consider other alternatives, but conservatives and independents have to go into these communities and talk with them, talk at them, and tell them that these problems in which they're experiencing, in which they want resolution to, aren't simply black problems, they're human problems. And until that happens, I think we're going to kind of see the spinning wheel of the same thing happening over and over and over again. Well, John Mosley again, back with Derek Green and from nationalcenter.org. We're talking about your article and analysis. And I think it's very important for people to go to National Center. You say click on Project 21. There's a whole bunch of issues there. Obama amnesty would hurt black Americans. So probably about 45 seconds left before we have to run. I was just struck before the break, all this phony scandals or phony crises. This is really, if we're not saying that what's going on in the black community is a crisis, we're just abusing the word. And the idea that, well, maybe in a perfect world, amnesty or this policy or that policy might make sense. When you look at these statistics in your article on nationalcenter.org, it's a totally different universe here with this real crisis. That's exactly right, and that's why I think it's important for us to say, even in a perfect world, amnesty wouldn't necessarily make sense, and I think that the ramifications of the policies and details of the effects of amnesty on the poor, the unfortunate, have to be discussed, because people continually talk about helping the poor, but if we continually serve issues or applaud issues or support issues that are against the best interests of the poor, then we're hypocrites, and it doesn't matter which side of the
Derek, we gotta go. Thank you so much. Derek Green from the Project 21, nationalcenter.org. Thank you so much. Back to you, Rick Trader.
All right, we're going to take a break. You're listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, that of WNJC 1360, and around the world on the internet. We'll be right back.
This is Rick Trader, host of the Conservative Commandos radio show.
And I'm John Forsyth, owner of WNJC Radio. Fellow patriots, the Conservative Commandos radio show is for conservatives, about conservatives, and by conservatives.
We are patriots who want to take our country back from the likes of Barack Obama, Harry Reid, George Soros and Nancy Pelosi.
But we can't keep up this fight without your critical support today. Can you help? Please go to www.helpccrs.com right now and make a donation by credit card or PayPal. That's www.helpccrs.com.
Our goal is to expose the liberal agenda and distortions. We are fighting to spread the truth about political issues, political leaders, and conservative issues and values.
Our hosts are not paid. In fact, we buy our own airtime, studio time, and pay our own expenses.
We created the show because we are trying to make a difference. So can you help the CCRS expose the truth in 2014 and beyond? Go to www.helpccrs.com.
You know, no one exposes the issues, liberalism, and the mainstream media like the Conservative Commandos radio show.
Our view for conservative values and issues, take positive action to restore them in our country.
Help keep the Conservative Commandos radio show on the air by going to www.helpccrs.com and make a donation today to return our country to the conservative roots created by our founding fathers.
The 9/11. It's a day that will go down in our history as the most horrific and destructive scene ever to happen on American soil. It will also be, for most Americans who witnessed it either up close or simply watched in horror on TV, America, to participate in a national memorial I call the United Action of Prayer this coming 9/11 and every 9/11 from then on. United Action of Prayer is simply every American stopping whatever they are doing for 1 minute at precisely 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. to either observe 1 minute of silence or pray in memory for the 9/11 victims and their families, and perhaps a prayer of gratitude for living in a country where even 9/11 could not at all weaken the spirit of our great nation.
If you're in a crash and have little cash, come to AJ Auto Body. We handle insurance claims fast, and repairs are guaranteed to last at AJ Auto Body. Come check us out, and without a doubt, you'll be satisfied. That's AJ Auto Body, 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. Family owned and operated for 30 years. We are a fully licensed and insured auto repair facility located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. We are your friend in the business. So stop in for a free estimate or call us at 856-251-0096. Check us out on the web at www.ajautobody.net. That's where you'll find our specials, discounts, and coupons. For all your car needs, come to AJ Auto Body, located at 1345 Delsey Drive in Deptford, New Jersey. 856-251-0096.
Hi, this is Bob Vide, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittlesportshop.com.
The Obama attack on our Constitution continues. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com and join J.D. Manier and Christina Lamb and hundreds of Reagan conservative commandos who demand our country return to its founding documents and principles. We are part of the nation's oldest and largest GOP volunteer organization, the National Federation of Republican Assemblies. We register voters, endorse conservative candidates, and dig deep to give you the truth on the big issues. We are fighting to do what Lincoln proclaimed 150 years ago. Let the people know the facts and the nation will be. Help Help support the Conservative Commando Radio Show with your donation today. Log on to INRASuperPAC.com. INRASuperPAC.com.
Now hear this. Man your battle stations.
You can call the Conservative Commandos Radio Show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
Welcome back to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader. And if you'd like to hear a repeat broadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. this evening Eastern Time, log on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. You can also hear a repeat broadcast of yesterday's show at 5 p.m. this afternoon by logging on to CPRWorldwideMedia.com. And you can hear our show anytime, day or night, from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. Jonathan Mosley, we do have our next guest, and the honor of the introduction is yours.
All right, we have Michael Rubin, who is a former Pentagon official whose major research areas are the Middle East, Turkey, Iran, and diplomacy. Michael Rubin instructs senior military officials deploying to the Middle East and Afghanistan on regional politics, teaches classes regarding Iran, terrorism, and Arab politics on board deploying U.S. aircraft carriers. Rubin has lived in post-revolution Iran, Yemen, both pre- and post-war Iraq, and spent time with the Taliban before 9/11. His newest book, Dancing with the Devil, The Perils of Engaging Rogue Regimes, examines a half-century of U.S. diplomacy with rogue regimes and terrorist groups. No one better than to teach us. So welcome to the Conservative Commandos Radio Show, Michael Rubin.
Hey, thank you, John, for that generous introduction.
Well, thank you so much. And, we could probably get a week with you here on everything going on. Some head-scratchers in the Middle East. I gather you have an article. Is that up at American Enterprise Institute? Airstrikes in Iraq don't substitute for strategy.
Well, it's actually a national interest article, but yeah, it's posted at the American Enterprise Institute website.
National Interest is the original journal. Where do we start? I've been a little bit flippant out of confusion. It seems like we've got 40,000 people up on a mountain over there, and I kind of jokingly say we're dropping water bombs. We're dropping some water and food over there. What do you? I mean, where do we start? What do you think is going on?
You're right. It's just incredibly frustrating because there's so much that needs to be done, and so much of what's going on now wasn't inevitable. What we have is a situation in the Middle East, not simply in Iraq, where it's almost as if the patient went to a doctor and was diagnosed with cancer, but President Obama waited until it reached stage 4 before he decided to give the patient an aspirin. And the fact of the matter is, ISIS has been on the rise for not weeks, not months, but years. It's not simply an Iraqi movement. Many of the fighters are foreign, in fact, but it grew up in Syria in a vacuum created or allowed to fester, if you will, by President Barack Obama. Now what we're doing is simply providing some emergency relief, treating the symptom, but not addressing the fundamental problem.
You remind me a bit of people who have a fear that if they go to the hospital, they'll get sick. Of what the doctor does there. So you talk about airstrikes. Now, there's a lot of countries. Are you saying that airstrikes per se don't work, or are you saying something more nuanced than that?
No, I'm saying I'll congratulate President Obama for taking some action, because at least he acknowledges with this action that Iraq is too important to allow it to fail. For too long, President Obama seemed to be engaging in a cynical policy, which was, I'll withdraw from Iraq completely and fulfill my campaign promise. If Iraq fails, I'll blame George W. Bush. If it succeeds, I'll claim credit. Now, ultimately, he's playing a political game with Iraqi lives, but seeing the photos and the video of these tens of thousands of Yazidis on the top of the mountain, just north of Sinjar, may have convinced him that, this game is a little bit too cynical even for the neighborhood organizer from Chicago. Now, when it comes to airstrikes, however, while the action is welcome, taking out a single artillery piece or even a dozen of them isn't going to make the difference between victory and defeat for either the Iraqi army or the Kurdish Peshmerga. What we need is a strategy to accompany the action and more substance than symbolism in whatever strategy we undertake.
Peshmerga being, I think, what they call some of their fighting.
The Peshmerga literally means those who face death. That's the name of the Kurdish militia.
Wow. But to those people who are concerned that this is a question of massiveness versus, something under control, I mean, what do you say? Is it a difference between, if we do something, it has to be another 10 years and another $1 trillion, or is it something else that is the issue?
Well, first of all, let's be clear when it comes to the original Iraq conflict. We've got to differentiate between the ouster of Saddam Hussein and the decades spent rebuilding the country on this unproven theory that's become ingrained in our conventional wisdom that development aids security and stability. I would argue that throwing billions of dollars into Iraq sparked a great deal of corruption, led to a hemorrhaging of both blood and treasure, and didn't really accomplish much. So I'm more prone to simply use the military for military functions rather than state building. That said, what we have with regard to ISIS is a military function. What I would like to see is using air power to force them to go to ground, deny them freedom of operation, and then under that circumstance, you could have the Peshmerga and the Iraqi army move in. I don't want to arm the Iraqi militias simply because we don't know where those arms are going to go, and the whole reason why the Kurdish Peshmerga haven't been doing well is they chose not to buy ammunition. Masoud Barzani, the president of Iraqi Kurdistan's son, instead bought a $10 million mansion in McLean, Virginia. These guys have got to be accountable for their actions as well.
Holy smokes. I didn't... So, what do you think... I was going to ask something else, but do you think that a significant factor in the stuff is that is precisely that we have allowed U.S. weaponry to fall into the wrong hands? Do you think that's an accelerant, maybe to use a fire analogy?
Well, let's not compartmentalize the problem artificially because ISIS spans Iraq and Syria. The way I tend to look at it is, you have a problem when the moderates, and I'm talking about Syria right now, are the ones who don't engage in cannibalism. Likewise, when the oppositions ask for weaponry, they're not asking for AK-47s and bullets. They're asking for a qualitative military edge. Would you trust this man with a surface-to-air missile? The answer to that's no. And would you trust the CIA to vet any of these so-called moderates? I would say the answer to that should also be no. After all, if we think back to the Chechen bombers of the Boston Marathon a year ago, April, if we couldn't vet 2 Chechens living in Boston and speaking our language, how can we vet those living in Syria and Iraq who don't? So you got a problem there. Sometimes if you have a mission, the best option is to take care of it ourselves. And so what I would propose is simply taking advantage of standing offers to use the Talil Air Base near Nasiriyah, near biblical Ur, Abraham's days, or using the Kirkuk airfield, and reintroducing some of our technicians with drones to do the job ourselves, rather than simply trust any sort of advanced technology to some of the folks on the ground who will misuse it or lose it.
Okay. We have to take a break right now. Can you hold on for about 2 minutes?
Yeah, of course.
All right, you are listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show with Jonathan Mosley and Rick Trader, coming to you from the CCRS studios, WNJC 1360, our flagship station in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The way we do Monday through Friday from 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern, and around the world on the internet with our internet broadcast partners, CPRWorldwideMedia.com and VigilantLibertyRadio.us. Don't forget you can hear our show anytime, day or night from any phone by calling 832-999-1199. We're speaking with Michael Ruman, Rubin, who's a former Pentagon official, talking about Iraq. Airstrikes in Iraq don't substitute for strategy.
Listen up, Christians. God has a couple of questions. Is it okay with you that atheists kick Christ out of schools and government? Godstickers.com. Is it okay with you if atheists take over America and mock God? Godstickers.com. Are you ready to fight back and unleash the gospel of Jesus Christ to 30,000 drivers per year on the streets of America? Then get a car magnet from Godstickers.com. Atheists can run from God's Word on Sunday, but they still have to read your bumper on Monday. All car magnet sales donated to MissingPets.com. Are you ready to make America do a U-turn? Visit Godstickers.com today and unleash the Word of God on America's highways. Godstickers.com car magnets. God's Word on the street.
Hi, this is Bob Viden, owner of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. I've had the opportunity to travel in many foreign countries, and I've seen what happens to people when they lose their freedom. I wrote this poem. Give us freedom was the cry as they marched throughout the night. At Concord Bridge in Trenton, for freedom they would fight. To build a nation that would last with peace and liberty, it is a job that's never done if we are to be free. They wrote a declaration to announce that we are free, then a constitution for all the world to see. But this is ink on paper. We must make it last. It must always be defended, and that is quite a task. Today the battle rages for freedom in our land. To save our Constitution, we all must take a stand. We must stand up for freedom in our actions every day, and you can stand up with us. Join the NRA. This is Bob Viden of Bob's Little Sports Shop in Glasper, New Jersey. You may call us at area code 856-881-7575 or visit us online at bobslittle.sportshop.com.
You can call the Conservative Commandos radio show at 856-227-1360. Your opinion counts at 856-227-1360.
This is Congressman Alan West, and you're listening to the Conservative Commando Radio Show.
And you can hear a rebroadcast of today's show at 9 p.m. Eastern Time this evening by logging on to vigilantlibertyradio.us. And at 5 p.m., when our live broadcast ends in about 8 minutes, can hear a replay of yesterday's show at CPRWorldwideMedia.com. Click on that Listen Live link. Our guest this segment is Michael Rubin from the Competitive Enterprise Institute. We're discussing an article he wrote, Airstrikes in Iraq Don't Substitute for Strategy. Michael, thanks for holding through that break. We appreciate your time.
Hey, no worries, anytime.
Michael, I got to facetiously go back to your bio, to the introduction that John read when we brought you on the program. It says here, Rubin instructs senior military officers deploying to the Middle East and Afghanistan on regional politics and teaches classes regarding Iran, terrorism, and Arab politics on board deploying U.S. aircraft carriers. Michael, facetiously now, where were you the night when Barack Obama called you and you didn't answer the phone?
Well, you know, I just got off the USS Macon Island with the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is heading to the Persian Gulf. So I'll say that I couldn't get the call because when this all started to happen, I was actually on not an aircraft carrier, but an LHD, which are ships which carry things like the Ospreys and the Harrier fighter jets.
You know, Michael, what's going on over there is frustrating for me. It must be driving you crazy.
Well, it is. I mean, I used to teach in Iraqi Kurdistan for a year, and so I have a lot of former students who now have, of course, families, and I've been on Facebook with them, calling them, and just hearing the frustration that they are talking about, as well as the frustration from Baghdad. Mm-hmm. You know, there's been a lot of scapegoating of Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki, and I'll admit, Maliki is no angel, but the more we try to lay the problems in Iraq and with the Islamic State at the feet of Prime Minister Maliki, the more we expose our misunderstanding of what is motivating the Islamic State. You know, terrorism or Islamist terrorism isn't motivated by grievance. It's motivated by ideology. No matter how many concessions Maliki could have given to some of the Iraqi Sunni tribesmen, it wasn't going to change the facts that ISIS was going to be misogynistic and have a bloodthirsty vendetta against any religious minority. Remember, most of ISIS aren't even Iraqis. They're Chechens, they're Pakistanis, they're Afghan, they're Germans, and unfortunately, some of them could be Americans.
I don't think a lot of people realize that, Michael.
Well, it's an al-Qaeda affiliate, and all you have to do is hang out along the Turkish border because the Turkish government, our so-called ally, is allowing any ISIS jihadi to cross their border into Syria for the discount price of a $40 bribe to the nearest policeman.
Wow. You know, Michael, we're talking about victory or defeat. In my opinion, Barack Obama doesn't care about either victory or defeat. He just wants to...
if I could jump in there,
sure.
It's really interesting to compare George Bush and his speech with regard to the Iraqi surge to Barack Obama and his speech with regard to the Afghan surge. When Bush announced the Iraqi surge, he may have had a timeline in his mind, but he talked about victory and he didn't announce publicly any timeline. When Obama announced the Afghan surge, he gave a timeline and he never talked about victory.
You know, and so... From what I understand, we have had limited airstrikes. I heard a number of 4 sorties in the last 24 hours, as you say, taking out one artillery piece at a time. But I'm asking you to clarify this for me, because that's why I do the show, to learn from people like yourself, that some actually called for airstrikes a long time ago when ISIS was massed on the Syrian border. When airstrikes could have been effective. What's the right story, Michael?
Well, you know, I think it is to some extent an intelligence failure that ISIS managed to catch us by surprise in taking over Iraq's second largest city about 2 months ago, or perhaps even a little bit longer when they took over Mosul. That said, a lot of people have been warning about ISIS and the threat of the metastasis of these al-Qaeda affiliates or offshoots in Syria, among them not only American officials, but also Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. I mean, one of the ironies of scapegoating the Iraqi Prime Minister is he was among the first to say, hey, look, there's a major problem coming from Syria, and it's starting to impact us. I think you know I went to Syria earlier this year, and I drove through towns like Mosul and Tikrit, which are now under ISIS control, and it was amazing going into the heart of Mosul. I mean, first of all, I was warned not to go there at Iraqi army checkpoints outside of town because the situation had gotten so dicey, but I was with Iraqis who I trusted, so they vouched for me. But when we got into the center of town, you had all these Syrian refugees who were just sitting on the street corners glowering. It really was adding fuel to the fire.
Michael, from the title of your article, Airstrikes in Iraq Don't Substitute for Strategy, it almost seems like they want to use airstrikes as a solution for every problem nowadays, and that's impossible. Can we take that away from what you're saying here?
Yeah, no, I don't think we should be using our pilots to kick the can down the road because we don't want to have a broader strategy. All our adversaries say, hey, Americans play chess while we play checkers. The fact of the matter is we've got to start thinking more than 1 or 2 steps ahead of ourselves as well.
One other question. What happened to the Army that was supposed to take over for when we left, that we spent a whole lot of money supposedly training and equipping? What happened to that Army?
Well, this is one of those issues that we need to address, and we need to address quickly, simply because it's possible that some of our most prominent generals were either exaggerating the strength of their training programs, and I'm talking General Petraeus, who was intimately involved in this, as well as Martin Dempsey, who is now chairman of Joint Chiefs of Staff, who was also in charge of training the Iraqi army, or maybe it's a factor beyond our control. A lot of people will point out this sectarianism and the ethnic divisions of the Iraqi army, but that doesn't explain the Peshmerga, which are more homogeneous. I mean, if we're basing the security of our withdrawal from Afghanistan upon this idea that we've trained the Afghan army, we shouldn't be making the same mistake 3 times. At the very least, it's time for the Pentagon to explain just what has gone wrong and to acknowledge that something has gone very, very wrong with the center point of our strategy of post-withdrawal security.
Well, this is John Mosley back again with Michael Rubin, and we could probably go on for a couple more hours, and I'd love to. But what you just said makes me wonder, does the diplomatic pressure to undermine al-Maliki demoralize their institutions like their army? We're saying that we're trying to, say that their government is bad and needs to change. Does that have any role, you think? That's kind of an
there's a lot of blame to go around. All I'm saying is we keep digging ourselves into this assumption that the problems in Iraq are motivated by grievance, and the big elephant in the room is Islamist ideology. That's not a grievance. We need to recognize Al-Qaeda didn't strike New York simply because of something the United States had done. It's because of what the United States is, what liberal democracy is, what individual freedom is, and none of those are issues upon which we should compromise.
That is a real powerful, interesting point. We're playing the wrong game, I would think. Now, we're probably pretty much out of time here. I want to make sure you have a chance to get in your thing, but maybe you could squeeze in a little bit. It seems to me, part of what you're saying before touched on, the American soldier and airman and sailor really kicked butt at the beginning of this war, and then something totally different happened. And I'm concerned that our country is really crippled by the fear that we can't send the military down the street for pizza without it costing us $1 trillion. And I think there's sort of a political trauma in that really disturbs me.
Well, there is a political trauma, and this is why I think it's so essential to separate the fundamental mission of ousting Saddam Hussein or ousting the Taliban from this political mission of rebuilding countries. That's not our responsibility. And I would also argue, look, I go back to Iraq all the time. I've been to Iraq 3 times this year already. The fact of the matter is I see a lot of success in Iraq, but most of that success is not because of us, but despite us. I'm talking about the reconstruction success. Iraqis are very, very grateful for the opportunities we provided them. And I'm not just talking the Kurdish areas. I also go to the Shiite and the Sunni areas. But we got to recognize pouring billions of dollars into USAID projects simply doesn't work. And indeed, it's not simply that it's ineffective. Oftentimes it makes the matters worse by sparking corruption. That's the sort of thing which has prolonged these conflicts in a way that we shouldn't tolerate.
Hey, Michael and John, we got about 30 seconds to wrap up. Michael, please tell our audience where they can go to follow your work, read your articles, and where to find out more about the American Enterprise Institute.
Well, the American Enterprise Institute, you can read everything from my colleagues like John Bolton or Fred Kagan at www.aei.org. Or else you can follow my work. I use Twitter not for conversations, but just to put out media appearances and publish pieces. And my Twitter handle is MRUBIN1971.
Well, again, thank you so much. But for right now, we're out of time. We got to run. We got to go. Take care. God bless. We'll see you tomorrow on the radio.
Thank you for listening to the Conservative Commandos radio show. Huge thanks to our co-hosts, contributors, patrons, callers, and our friends at WNJC 1360 and WIFI 1460, where we broadcast live every Monday through Friday, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern and 2 to 4 p.m. Central. Look for us on the internet at www.ccrshow.com. Until next time, we are the Conservative Commandos radio show, where the newsmakers go to be heard.